Hello and welcome to this new series of videos in which we'll be charting my painting of some French Cuirassiers. Specifically, I will be painting up the 5th Squadron of the 13th French Cuirassier Regiment for the 1813 campaign, and for that I'll be using these metal figures from Perry Miniatures. These are 3 different packs. They're the Standing Cuirassier. I specifically chose them because I actually quite like not saying so much non-dynamic poses, but well sculpted poses that tell a different kind of story to the average everybody's charging or advancing or marching or fighting. That's why I particularly enjoyed doing the extra artillery crew diorama as well. And I've picked these, and to be honest, they are excellent sculpts. They're so well done, each of them communicating little bits of a story. So as we go down the line, I'll just point them out with the paintbrush. You got this chap here that's sorting out his helmet and doing something. You got the officer looking slightly miserable. You got the trumpeter who is indicating something. These have been arranged in an 8 here, as they will be based as well. The bases are obviously not on the camera. And they won't all be directly facing forwards either. They'll be slightly offset, etc. But the trumpeter's indicating something, and generally they've been arranged to make the most out of the sculpts, to tell a little story, which is what I quite like doing. For wargaming purposes, will they look a little bit odd if they ever actually get moved into contact, when normally they'll probably be standing in a reserve somewhere? Yeah, perhaps, but they're such great sculpts, and I'm really enjoying painting them, because as you can see, I've already made some progress. So just to hold a couple up to see where I've gone. The first part of the process, as I might have mentioned in a couple of other videos as well, and we'll use this chap here as my example. Here we go, bring him onto camera. Is that I block in all the main colours. And it looks kind of a bit dull and drab on camera here at the moment, but it's the basically getting in, okay, what block colours need to be applied to each area of the miniature. So as you can see here, I've gone over all the key colours already. So the dark blues for the horse saddle furniture, and for the guy's tunic, jacket, etc. underneath it. And then all the other most obvious colours as well, so the reds, brown and light greys in areas where I'm going to be doing colours that work off that kind of complementary base quite well. Red, obviously, is quite a lot of red on the miniature in different places. The only bit that I haven't blocked in as of yet on this one are the brass fittings, so that's the next colour to go over. But there has been a layer of dark brown applied to the areas where the brass fitting base colour will go on over the top of it. And you can see I've been all around the miniature. The one thing I have finished already is I went straight ahead and completed all the metal areas, using my new Scale 75 set of paints. It's the first time I've used them exclusively to paint metallic silvery sort of colours with, instead of using citadel paints, and it's come out really, really well. I did mix a couple of them, but I'm really pleased with the way it sort of reflects and shines and shows different levels of tarnish and wear, etc. But yeah, that's what I recommend as a sort of first step for miniature painting. Everyone has their own ways of doing things. I mean, I've sort of watched in awe people that can paint the whole miniature black and then completely paint to completion one area of the miniature, whether that be the facial expression, features, and so forth. I don't think I could bring myself to do that. I can't really think of an occasion on which I've done that necessarily. I like to get all the sort of areas of colour worked in, so I know what I'm working from for each part of the miniature. You can't really make it out here, but for example, I've done the greys on the saddle roll underneath and so on. This is in preparation for what I tend to do next, is get all the layer colours in, and then I will apply washes selectively where I need to different ones. So in this case, the red of the epaulettes, etc. I'll go ahead and apply a red wash to that area. It's not actually to pick out shade or define anything in a particular way. It's and by that I mean I'm not just going to highlight straight on top of it. It's because a lot of these areas require 2 layers of the base colour that I'm going to paint on.
So often with things like backpacks or things like this with details or so on, it's going to really help before putting on the second layer to put in a little bit of a wash, because that'll just show through and help shade the next layer up, and then I'll start highlighting. So I don't tend to use techniques of perhaps what people might consider the army painter style, where I block in all the colours and then do a big series of washes on top and then highlight them. It's a perfectly valid way of doing things. I just have never found that particularly appealing for me personally. So yes, there'll be a selected bit of a red wash on there. I think that's mostly it, other than maybe some kind of sepia or dark brown wash for the saddle furniture. And that's about it on this one, with the exception of the brass fittings, which will also have some kind of wash applied to them. But yeah, this is where I've got to so far with them, just blocking in the base colours. See, the trumpet is slightly different here. The one thing that is going to be specific to this unit that I'm going to have to come up with is the facing colour. You can't see it on the cuffs because they're all wearing the sort of big gauntleted gloves, but you will be able to see it on the turnbacks and on the collars of the regular Cuirassier troopers. And in this case, with the 13th Cuirassier, it's I think it was basically the French translates as wine dregs, and I've seen it described as wine coloured. I've also seen it described as crimson, but I don't think that's accurate. And obviously it's open to interpretation what wine-coloured might mean. So I'm going to come up with a sort of dark red, slightly purpley tinted colour for the actual facings. Why it matters for the trumpeter that I'm holding up is because his jacket underneath the white lace is going to have to be that colour as well. But I think it'll look quite smart when it's done. Anyway, so that's the stage the figures are at the moment. Notwithstanding one more colour to block in for them. And then in the next part of this, when we come back, I'll have moved it along a little bit. And in the next stage, I will have picked out certain areas and certain details, which I will do to completion. I don't do them in isolation off the base colour, but I do, once I pick an area, finish it. For example, if I was going to, like I have done on the metallics, I've done them to completion. If I pick out the brass, I'll do that to completion. In terms of the order in which I pick things out, it can be a bit random. I have tried to become a bit more process-driven to make it more efficient. So, for example, I'll pick out the face and do that to completion. In terms of what order I do it in, however, there are different schools of thought. I know in the past I've read people's advice that we'll try working from inside, in inverted commas, to outside on the miniatures. That is to say, in the case of this Cuirassier, well, do the flesh tones and things that are on the inside, in inverted commas, first, and do those to completion, then work out. Actually, I tend to find I do the flesh last. It's the thing that is the most fiddly in some respect, and the thing that I try to take the most care over, and thus I tend to do it last. It would really break me if I painted something like that to a high level of detail, and in the process of doing the rest of the miniature, accidentally slopped some paint over to it. Because whilst that's not irrecoverable, it's not easy to do delicately in a way that doesn't damage the painting that's already been done. The reason I've picked up this figure as well is another peculiarity of this regiment is that because they fought in Spain, they had brown cloth for some of their uniforms. And so as a nod to that, although I'm not sure by the time they've arrived in Germany that the 5th Squadron would be like this, two of the figures, this one and the guy with the jaunty hand up on his hip, will have brown jackets, although you can't really see it in this light. It looks just as dark as the dark blue. Anyway, that's all for part 1. When we come back, I will have progressed it on with having done the washes and the first additional layers and a couple of the details that I will have finished and highlighted all the way up. The last thing that remains to be said is, yes, all these riders have been glued to the horses. It is something I do for all mounted miniatures. I know, again, there are different schools of thought on this. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way. It's just personal preference. For me, I don't find it particularly arduous or painful to paint round the details of the sculpt because the miniatures have been mounted. But I appreciate other people prefer to do it different ways. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this first stage of seeing these painted, and join us again in part 2 when we'll have moved things along and I'll discuss what I've done, how I went about it, and perhaps some tips for if you were going to paint these miniatures or similar cavalry miniatures, or just hopefully some generic useful painting chat that may provide you some inspiration for your own hobby in the future. In the meantime, thanks for watching and happy hobbying.